We're going to build a light industrial distribution warehouse model for a property in Mississauga in Canada. So to do that, we're going to click on Create New Property, and we're going to create one from scratch. This one is going to be called Pearson Warehouse, and it is a light industrial property, Class B. It's in Canada. Yep. So we have the currency set as Canadian dollars. Our default unit is going to be square feet. And we want to do amount per square foot per year for rental rates. So that works out well. We hit create property. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is build some inflation schedules. Um, the first one will be market rental growth. And we're going to set that at 3.5% per year. And so that'll start when the analysis starts and ends at the end of the analysis period. And we're also going to do one for expenses. We'll call that OPEX inflation. And we'll set that at 2.5% per year. Okay, next up is leasing rules. So leasing rules are what the ReturnSuite system uses to generate new replacement leases. So whenever you have an empty space, and it's connected to a leasing rule, it's going to kind of reach into this bag and pull out a lease based off of these leasing rules. We'll call this one warehouse leasing rule. And so we set the leasing parameters here. So the first thing we do is time to lease. So how long it'll take once a space becomes vacant to create a new lease, to find a new tenant. And we're going to set that at 9 months. And it's going to start on the first of the next month, which means if a lease is scheduled to come in kind of mid-month, what it'll do is the system will wait until the first of the following month to start the new lease. The new leases are going to be 7 years, and once it's expired, the space will move back onto the market. The base rent is going to be in an amount per square foot. But you can see we have lots of different options, but we're going to put in $18.25 per square foot per year. And we're going to link that to our inflation that we just set up. So we'll link that to market rental growth. Step rent, we're going to set as a percentage of base per year. So we'll set that at 2%. So that means this new 7-year lease that comes in, the base rate will be $18.25. That'll change with inflation. So if a lease comes in the next year, it'll be $18.25 plus 3.5% inflation. And any lease that gets signed, the first year will be the base rent. And then every year after that, on the anniversary date, there'll be a 2% increase to that base rate. They are going to have, all these new tenants are going to have some free rent as part of the deal. And we will set that at 3 months. And the tenant is also going to get kind of free expenses. So the tenant won't have to pay recoveries during this free rent period. So we're going to unclick that box. Of course, we're going to need to pay leasing commissions if a broker finds us a tenant. So we're going to set that at $7 per square foot. And we're going to link that to inflation as well. There typically isn't going to be any tenant improvements on new leases for a warehouse, so we'll leave that as none. Same with the incentives. And these tenants, these kind of prospective tenants, are going to be signing full or net leases. And they will pay rent monthly on the first of each month. There we go. We're done the leasing role. So spaces are the kind of the physical spaces that we are leasing out, and uses are can be thought of as leases. So how those spaces are being used by tenants. So we're going to add 3 spaces to our warehouse. So unit 1 is 236,700 square feet. It's always going to be available, and we're going to link it to the warehouse leasing rule that we set up previously. We'll add a second space, unit 2. That is 279,300 square feet. Again, always available, linked to the same leasing rule. And the third space is slightly smaller, 194,800 square feet. And again, always available and linked to the warehouse leasing rule. Okay, we'll add some usages to each of these units. So for unit 1, we have can go retail fulfillment. That tenancy starts in 2025 on March the 15th, and we'll go to 2032 February 14th. Once it's the lease is expired, the unit will go back onto the market. The base rent in this lease is for $18.75 per square foot per year. There is a step rent in place, and that is 4% per year. So each year on the anniversary date, the base rent will go up 4%. There is some free rent. It is 4 months, and will also include getting free recoveries. So we'll uncheck this box here. We paid leasing commissions to our broker for this of $7.15 per square foot. And in this case, the tenant did get a tenant improvement allowance, and that was for $10 per square foot. There was no incentives, and it was a full net lease, and they're paying rent monthly on the first. For unit 2, we have Golden Horseshoe Foods. Their lease started in 2023 on June 1st. And their lease goes to 2030, the end of September. It'll go to market when it expires. Their rent, when they first signed it, was for $17.95 per square foot per year. They have a step rent, but in this case, it's not percentage. It's actually going up an amount per square foot per year of 50 cents. They got 5 months of free rent. And again, they also got free recoveries. So we'll uncheck that box. The leasing commissions were in dollars per square foot again, $1.75. There was no tenant improvements, no incentives, and it was a full or net lease with payments on the first of each month. Unit 3 is vacant or doesn't have a tenant at the moment. So what we'll do is we won't add a usage, and ReturnSuite will kind of reach into that leasing rule bucket and generate a future lease using those leasing rules. We're going to add some other revenues as well. This property is along Highway 401, which is a really busy freeway in the Greater Toronto area. So this property earns some highway signage revenue. They earn $180,000 per year. We're going to link that to inflation. And it's actually variable, this 180,000. It depends on the occupancy of the property, but not fully on the occupancy. So we're going to set that to 50%. So in this case, if the building was fully occupied, that whole 180,000 would be earned. But if it was completely unoccupied, it would still earn $90,000 per year from external sources of revenue. So that's what that 50% means. 50% is fixed and 50% depends on the occupancy. Now, the payment frequency isn't monthly, it is actually quarterly. And so when we choose quarterly, what we get is a alignment date here. And so in this case, it is January 1st. And what that does, the system will automatically create the other three quarterly payment dates once you set the one alignment date. And the revenue is going to start when the property is acquired and end when we sell the property. Okay, we're going to add some costs now. So we're going to add three different operating expenses. The first one is property taxes, and those will be paid to the city of Mississauga. And it is equal to $1.45 per square foot per year. And we're going to link that to inflation. We're going to link it to the OPEX inflation, though. And in terms of variability, it is fixed. The city of Mississauga doesn't care if our building is occupied or not. They want the full amount of property taxes. But the expense is recoverable, 100% recoverable from tenants. So we're going to switch that to percentage and 100%. And the payment frequency, the city of Mississauga collects property taxes semi-yearly, and the alignment date is going to be July 1st. And the expense will start and end when we buy and sell the property. Okay, our second operating expense is insurance. And that is an amount per year, and it is just over 2 million. So $2,009,000 per year. We're going to link that to inflation as well. It is also completely fixed, but it is also 100% recoverable from our tenants. That is a quarterly payment. So that just over $2 million payment will be broken up into four payments per year. And one of our alignment dates is going to be February 1st. And again, the expense starts and stops with property ownership. And the final OPEX item is landscaping and snow removal. That has been calculated as an amount per rentable area per year and is $1.83 per square foot per year. We're going to link that to OPEX inflation as well. Now, this one is dependent on the occupancy. So if the property isn't fully occupied, presumably we don't have to do as much snow removal or landscaping. And so that is 50% variable. But it is 100% recoverable. And that's going to be paid monthly on the first for as long as we own the property. And finally, we have a CapEx item. So capital expenditure is for the resurfacing of the parking lot. And it is a one-time amount. And that amount in today's dollars is 1.75 million. So $1,750,000. We're going to link that to inflation. And the reason why that's important is the expense is actually in 2028. June 1st, we're going to assume that's when the payment is made. So what ReturnSuite will do is if the payment was this year, it would be 1.75 million, but because it's in 2008, it's going to add inflation, compounding that amount up until 2028, and it'll probably end up being somewhere between 1.8 and 1.9 million dollars. All right, step 4 is adding purchase and financing information. So the property was purchased in 2023 on May 1st. and it was purchased for $128,750,000. That was the agreed upon amount, but of course there was some closing costs. First one is broker fees, and those are set as a percentage of the closing amount, and the percentage is 1.25%. And there was also Ontario land transfer taxes, and it is also set as a percentage, and it's 2.5% in Ontario. When the landlord bought the property, they used some financing, and they borrowed $55 million in an amortizing loan. The interest rate, with an interest rate of 7.75%. In Canada, typically interest on mortgages is compounded semi-annually. The system knows we're in Canada, so it defaulted to semi-annual, but you can see there's a bunch of different options here for different compounding periods, which means that that 7.75% compounded semi-annually actually works out to an effective annual rate of just over 7.9%. The financing starts when the property is acquired. We're making monthly payments. The term of the loan is 7 years, but the amortization term is 20 years. We'll hit continue. We'll go to the final step, which is defining the analysis period and the eventual sale amount. We'll add an analysis period first, and what this is essentially just the window of time that we want to analyze. We want to analyze from January 1st, 2025, and we only want to analyze 5 years of ownership. So at the end of the 5 years, we want to come up with a reversionary value. So we're going to add some reversion information. You see, we have different NOI periods that we can capitalize, and we're going to go with the forward 12 months, which is the most common one. We're not going to make any adjustments for gross up occupancy or NOI adjustments, but we are going to enter in a cap rate, and the cap rate we're going to assume in 5 years is going to be 7.75%. Of course, there's going to be some adjustments to that amount. Again, there's going to be broker fees. And so that's a transaction cost. It's going to be applied to the percentage of adjusted reversionary value. Now, in our case, because we haven't made any adjustments, gross up adjustments or NOI adjustments, these two, the initial reversionary value and the adjusted reversionary value are the same. But what we should be doing is applying these to the adjusted reversionary value. So we'll do that. And on the sales side, it is 1.75%. And again, we have Ontario land transfer taxes, transaction cost, and it's a percent of the adjusted reversionary value. And again, it's 2.5%. And we're going to ignore the investment return section for now, and we're just going to hit complete property. And there we go. We have built out the model for Pearson Warehouse. And what I'll do is in the next video, I will go through a bunch of the reports and show you the different information that you can get from ReturnSuite.